Hey everybody, I'm Tommy and you were on the Lifeboat. So last night I tried to do this show and had issues with the internet, kind of a developing country issue. So it never got up and got put on. So I'm coming back to do this show right now. There's some things, some very interesting things that have happened in relation to the Sean Diddy Combs situation. His people had filed an emergency. It was a Hail Mary, a get out of jail by Christmas thing. And it simply didn't happen. The judge, Ruin Subramanian, said absolutely no chance this is going to happen. It had been reported by so many people that he's about to get out. They just filed papers. They'll be out by Christmas. I keep saying this. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but the sensationalism in true crime, what it takes to get people to watch, to put thumbnails up that are going to attract people's attention. Look at the people that literally put up 3 Diddy videos a day. The man is sitting in federal prison. There isn't 3 things a day to talk about Sean Diddy Combs on. I mean, it's a moneymaker, and they're gonna stick with making that money. I'm glad I don't. I'm glad that is not something that I'm doing every day. This Nick Reiner case, the murder of Michelle and Rob Reiner by their son allegedly. He's certainly sitting in jail for it, and there's a lot pointing to the fact that he did it. We're going to keep saying allegedly because it's the right thing to do. But we're learning a lot more about him and his previous drug use. They're going to sell us the narrative that this guy's insane. That's the narrative that's going right now. That's the narrative that's being pushed by an awful lot of people, an awful lot of really large content creators like TMZ. A lot of these people are running with this story. And what you're not getting anyone theorizing is maybe the guy's just an asshole. I'm sorry. But the more you start to dive deep into this and the more you start to look at it, there's a lot of friends that this guy had that said the narrative doesn't fit at all. You know, all of the things that they're talking about him being a crazy wild man, it seems the only people that saw that were his family. I mean, he made people uncomfortable when he was twacked. He made people uncomfortable when he was really high. But the narrative also that he went to rehab for cocaine when he was a kid. He went to rehab for smoking weed, and he had done the first time he had gone to rehab. According to him, these are his words. The only 3 drugs that he had been doing were he was snorting ecstasy, he had done acid, and he was smoking a lot of pot. But I think he got sent to rehab, and that rehab was probably as much a psychiatric kind of a rehabilitation center than it was a drug rehabilitation center. It's interesting to me that this is getting rewritten. So while he was in rehab, he met somebody who talked to him about how fantastic heroin was. His roommate in prison, or I'm sorry, in rehab, they'd call him a cellmate in prison, but his roommate was a heroin addict. And in his own words, Nick Reiner said, so I had to spend all that time in there listening to how great heroin was. Did you think I wasn't going to go out and instantly go get a bag of heroin? So he went to Skid Row with this guy after the guy got out of rehab. And he has sought out drug use. And we talk a lot about people self-medicating. And they, you know, that's the narrative, is that he was doing these drugs for the purpose of self-medicating. I don't know that that's the truth. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a recovered drug addict. But the drug-seeking behavior of most people isn't ooh, I really wanted to try this one. Ooh, I really wanted to try that one. Most people that self-medicate will find something and continue to do it. They'll find something and they'll stay on it. And this kid was an equal opportunity abuser of just about everything. It's odd that people go from being addicted to heroin to being addicted to methamphetamine. It happens, but normally someone likes to go up or someone likes to go down. And it doesn't mean that, look, I did plenty of stimulants, but my drug of choice was heroin. They also gave us a narrative that he had been off heroin for a very long time. And there are people that are saying that may not be the case. I'm not suggesting he was on heroin when he did this, but he certainly had gone back and done things since he allegedly was clean from the drug. He definitely showed up places, bought bags of dope and did them. So this is going to be a jumbled ass narrative for the entire time of this trial. I promise you. And it's probably going to get worse, not better. You can watch how this trends. And more importantly than anything, especially for those of us who dig true crime, and you wouldn't be here if you didn't. I like a joint. It's good for my fibromyalgia. And I don't see that that's a huge problem. The vulnerability of the heart is the innocence. Oh, I got to see that again. The vulnerability of the heart. The innocence of the heart can be broken. Maybe the drugs are a way to emulate that same vulnerability. Here's the thing. This was a guy that there's no doubt whatsoever that he had mental illness, right? I don't think anybody is going to argue that. However, if you go look at the thumbnails of the large content creators who do true crime, there are psychologists, psychiatrists, people coming on there, and they are telling you what the diagnosis of this kid is. None of them have sat down with him, but they're all coming on to say, this is why this isn't going to happen. I have a slightly different angle on this, and I could have made it probably a fairly sensational thumbnail, but to be honest with you, I'm kind of tired of that. But I don't think that this is necessarily going to be a situation where they want to go to trial at all. If they can make the court say that he's not fit, right, to stand trial, this is something where they can put him into a psychiatric hospital, and some people don't ever get out. If this were a lesser crime, they can put you in a psychiatric hospital, and once they decide that, let's say if it's a misdemeanor, and they say you're not fit to stand trial, they drop the misdemeanor charges. For real. It's just not worth the court's money, time, and effort. If it's even a low felony, sometimes they will do that. This is the murder of two people. So if he were to be put into a psychiatric hospital, he could spend the rest of his life in that psychiatric hospital if it's determined that he's not fit to stand trial. And what that means is that he can't aid in his own defense. He's that kind of whacked out. And this is a narrative that's being played out now across a bunch of different platforms that people are just saying that may be the goal. The goal may be to pull that off. The problem with that is if they eventually determine that you're no longer, non-compos mentis, if they get to a point where they say he absolutely is at least sane enough to stand trial, then that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to have to go in there and stand trial. And this is a kid that can't do time. He couldn't do time in rehabs. He's admitted in podcasts and in interviews that he tossed a brick through a window at a rehab, pretended to be crazy so that he could get Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin, or bupropion, is it's a psych med. It's a medication that they give to people usually for depression. He admits to shooting it. This is a guy that was taking Wellbutrin, putting it in a spoon and shooting it. People in prison have been known to do that. And apparently in parts of Canada, it really became an issue. It's a dangerous drug to shoot. If you're listening, don't do this, right? If somebody hears this and thinks, well, I got Wellbutrin, it's a horrendous drug to try to put in the vein. If by some chance you miss, the abscesses and the rotting of skin that takes place from this is just horrible. But he wanted to get on that drug because you could get high on it. The federal prison system has removed Wellbutrin completely from its formulary. You cannot get it. And the reason that they did that is because it was the most abused drug in federal prison for about 5 or 10 years. And they would crush it up and snort it. Guys with needles would shoot it. It mimics cocaine. And by that, I mean it takes you way up and then you come down pretty quickly. People that snort coke don't get high all day. They snort coke and then a little bit later, they got to snort more coke. And a little bit later, they got to snort more coke. And the Wellbutrins, or Welbies, became a real issue in the federal system. This guy has gone out of his way to fake being crazy. That's his words. I'm not using that as a pejorative. But he has said in interviews, I faked being crazy to get more medication. He doesn't seem to have extended this kind of behavior outside of his family. And by all accounts, it was very much targeted toward his father. And his sister Romy apparently was pretty frightened by him. But if she was daddy's little girl, right, I would imagine that he would have animosity toward her. Even in interviews in his 20s, he would talk about how he couldn't connect with his father. Hey, Kevin Hawthorne, Lakeland, Florida. Good to see you, my friend. This is going to be one of those weird cases where there's a chance this kid's just a jerk. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. There's a chance that this kid abused so many drugs and got to a point where he was so fed up, he wanted to be famous. He wanted to be rich. In interviews, he kept talking about projects that he wanted to do. He was going to do a project on his grandfather. But in the interviews, he said, the weed is kind of making it tough for me to follow through on this. It's kind of killing my ambition. He was a very spoiled child, right? By child, I mean up to the age of 32. They paid all of his bills. They gave him 10 grand a month and they gave him a place to live. And I'm not blaming the parents. I'm not. But he didn't have to deal with any kind of repercussions from anything he did in life. His first crime, according to him, was stealing $200 from his dad's wallet for the purpose of buying a prostitute. He said that he liked to do heroin because it cut back on premature ejaculation. He says these things super openly in interviews. And there are people that are coming out with the theory that, he's probably on the spectrum. Most people wouldn't talk about things like that openly. Sometimes people who are autistic don't, have the same kind of boundaries, and they don't feel any discomfort. He went on that dopey podcast often until the one of the hosts of that podcast, I believe his name was Chris, overdosed and died. And afterwards, the co-host wanted to get Nick back on, but he wanted Nick to bring his father. And Nick, from what I've been able to look, they had hundreds and hundreds of text messages back and forth between the co-host of the podcast, the one that survived, and Nick Reiner. They were very close. The second he brought up his dad, all that was over. There was really a lot of hatred toward his father. This narrative of it snapped, that I don't see this as something that is realistic. I think this is a lifelong hatred that eventually led to him killing his dad. And I think his mom was, very often people that really hate one of their parents feel that the other one enables that other parent to be a worthy of being hated, I guess. That mom was like a co-defendant in what has shaped his life. He blames all of his problems on his father. I think it's pretty obvious from any of the interviews that he's done. He wanted to be rich. He wanted to be famous, and dad just didn't make that happen. And I think he kind of felt like his grandfather made that happen for his dad. And if you look at how Rob Reiner's father, what he did, he wrote on the Sid Caesar show. He wrote with two other famous comedians, right? And then that's kind of the same gig that he helped his son get into. I think that Nick was pissed off, not about the will, not about any of the things people are theorizing about. I think he was a Nepo baby that doesn't feel like he got enough nepotism. Like he didn't get dad to go, all right, let me make you famous. And the one time where we see that there's anything that even was remotely not looking hateful or sounding hateful was when his dad did this much, right? His dad made that movie with him. One other theory real quick. Reputation is everything in Hollywood. And I think that a lot of times it's a lot easier to say that your kid has a drug problem versus my kid is mentally ill. But some of the rehabs that I've been trying to chase down that this kid went into look more like psychiatric hospitals, right? The rehabs that he actually did go to were very much 12-step programs. They weren't, they were rehabilitation centers in that there were people going in there and having to stay. But they taught simply the 12 steps. You would think that as he was progressing through that, they might find something a little bit more radical. And I'm not bagging on the 12-step programs. They've saved more people than I will dream of helping. But it's not something that modern addicts seem to do as well with, right? Because there's a history now. When that first came out, so when AA first came out, NA first came out, it was believed that you could not treat an addict, right? The physician desk reference used to say, keep them away from guns, keep them away from vehicles. This is what's going to happen. They're going to end up killing themselves. Don't let them kill somebody else. There's no cure. That was the medical stance on addiction. And it took addicts to realize that that wasn't the case. So once that became kind of a belief, now you're not born into a world where addiction is something that you can't beat. So when you show up thinking, well, this is going to be my cure, and it isn't, you kind of need someone that's going to take a more personal approach, that's going to sit down and talk to you about things that maybe aren't as structured. A one-size-fits-all thing doesn't work. It saved a lot of people, but there's a lot of people for whom 12-step programs are a nightmare. Women in general don't do as well in 12-step programs as men because it is absolutely, you're training without earbuds. Well, that's the spirit, John. This is one of those situations where women go in and it's like a meat market. The guys in there are like, ooh, look, women. I've talked to so many women who went to 12-step programs who were like, I got tired of getting hit on. I got tired of guys coming up and asking for my number and doing all of that. It's not really a great environment to get sober if everybody in there is trying to get your phone number or get you into bed. It's kind of an ugly thing, right? It's you can see me or you can't hear me. I like it. It's not such a bad thing. John. You can always put on closed caption. Actually, you probably can't while I'm live. But I am of the firm belief that Dad did a lot of drugs, right? We know this because as a kid, I'm not saying he did it when he was older, but the story of him tripping and his father coming in to talk him down, his mother stormed out of the house. If you read that entire, the transcript from that whole interview, he said when he went in, his parents were in bed. He went in and said, "I'm tripping. I'm scared." His mom was like, "You know what? I'm out of here." Like she was upset. She left the house. And Rob went into the room and said, "Hey, lay down. I can talk you through this. I did a lot of drugs. This is going to pass. You're just tripping." And like I said, I have no problem with that. I really don't. But obviously, this guy had a history with drugs. There is a level of acceptance when you've done it. It doesn't mean that you're going to give him a pass. Obviously, they were doing everything they could to try to get him help. I wonder how much the help came from them. How do you hate someone that gave you everything? I don't understand. Well, I think that this is going to be the hardest sell for the jury, right? This is where the jury is going to struggle with this. How do you hate someone that gave you everything? They're going to say, and then they're going to probably come across with they gave him everything financially, right? They gave him a ton of money. They took care of him that way. But was there any kind of a connection? Because in his interviews, he always talks about how it's not. The other thing that's going to be a really hard thing for most people to swallow is that there was no premeditation in this. This was a psychotic episode. You got into an argument with somebody at a party. Then you left and got a knife and killed somebody. That is a reaction to something that happened. That's not, well, it's been, the insanity or the mental illness. No, you got into an argument. You were embarrassed. You went and got a knife, and then you went and killed your parents. Is probably going to be more likely to be believed. And killing one's parents, although it's rare as hell, it really is. It does happen, right? But normally it doesn't happen to famous people. This is something that jumps off the page more, not because he killed his mother and his father, but because they were sort of royalty. And by the way, I was doing a little digging on the history of the house that they live in, which is kind of fascinating. That house has been owned by some pretty famous people. Henry Fonda, the great actor that did a lot of Westerns, father of Jane Fonda, of Peter Fonda. Jane Fonda and Peter Fonda were born and raised in that house. It was a previous version on that land. Henry Fonda bought that when there was 9 acres of land on it, and he raised 2 kids there. Then it was sold to the guy that played Victor Laszlo in the movie Casablanca. The guy that everybody, the guy that everybody doesn't want to love at the end, right? Because the girl leaves with him instead of Bogart. But he lived in there, and sadly, he was blacklisted with the whole communist McCarthy thing that went on, and he ended up selling that house to I believe the next owner was Norman Mailer, if I'm not mistaken. He's the guy that did All in the Family and did an awful lot of very popular TV shows and worked with Rob Reiner, and Rob ended up buying it from him. 1991, I think, for about $4.75 million. But it's got a long and storied history in Hollywood, which is kind of it's going to be the center of this entire case, is that this is a Hollywood tragedy of a Hollywood family, and Hollywood is as much to blame for everything that happened to this family as anything else. This kind of behavior would be very different. Hello, AVAC. This kind of behavior would be very, very different. Cindy G, good to see it. In any other occupation. But there's something about Hollywood that just gives a pass, right? When you hear Nick Reiner do interviews, he talks about crimes he committed, right? There's a bunch of him talking about crimes he committed. Now, I watched somebody else's podcast, and they said that he admitted to robbing a veterinary clinic, like going to a vet to get drugs, and that landed him in jail. He has no criminal record. I can't find anywhere else other than a content creator saying this. I can't find any place, anywhere where this kid admitted this. I heard a content creator say it. Now other content creators are going to run with it because that's kind of how it happened. If that did take place, it makes you wonder if it happened more than once. With what this kid was doing, he was visiting prostitutes. He was going to Skid Row to buy dope. There's a lot of stuff in this guy's past that screams police intervention. And it makes you wonder whether or not Hollywood went, you know what? It's robbing Michelle Reiner's kid. You know, unfortunately, the reality is that in Los Angeles and in the Hollywood environment, period, you stand a really good chance of getting out of any trouble that you get into if your family is very wealthy and if your family is very famous. And sadly, that's not always the best thing. It's living and working under blue lights. Yeah, and rose-colored glasses, right? Because the rest of the world looks to Hollywood and goes, "Oh man, they got it made." You know, they got it made. But the amount of sin, for lack of a better word, the amount of vice, you know, prostitution. This kid was visiting a prostitute at 14. I'm sorry, man. Like, I had a pretty wild life, but hitting a prostitute at 14 seems to be a very odd thing to me. And his father found out that he took $200 out of his wallet to go do that. I'd have lost my mind at that point. As a dad, I would have been terrified that my 14-year-old was going to visit a prostitute. The stories that he tells about this are horrific and detailed. He talks about things that he did to a 40-year-old woman, accidentally did to a 40-year-old woman, and it's just disturbing stuff. And some of it starts to play into mental illness, and I feel like it's probably not going to be a popular, but I think that he was victimized by a lot of people along the way because of who he was. The Dopey podcast would love to have him on, right? Love to have him on because he was robbing Michelle Reiner's kid, and that was probably I don't know. It's going to haunt him in this trial. The stuff that he said on the Dopey podcast, if you guys haven't gone and checked that out, please do. My daughter took lots of drugs, never got violent till meth. I now have a restraining order. Well, I'm glad that you have a restraining order. I'm sorry that happened, though. But see, this is going to sound to people who are not in. What is meth? McKenna asks. Meth is a street version, right, of a drug that's in the amphetamine family, right? And it's very simple to make. It usually comes in a form that kind of looks like rock candy, right? It's in a crystallized form. It's usually called crystal meth or crystal methamphetamine, and it just gets shortened to meth. It's been around for a long time. It started out as very popular within biker gangs, and the biker gangs basically were controlling it. At the time, there were 3 ingredients to the recipe. They used to call it the red, white, and blue recipe. And the white was ephedrine, like you could get in Sudafed, right? The stuff that you take for when you're stuffed up or for colds. So ephedrine, and then iodine and red phosphorus. So blue iodine crystals, red phosphorus. And these guys would make these things in garages. This is not, you don't normally get methamphetamine from pharmacies, although it does come in pill form. There are basically a couple of different versions of that. One is called dexedrine, not like the one you could buy over the counter, but and they give it for ADHD. That is dextromethamphetamine, basically. And then the top of the food chain for that is a drug called digoxin, which is basically meth in a pill. But the meth on the street is usually snorted, smoked, or injected. And when you start snorting and injecting, then you're getting to a kind of a really ugly place. The problem with this drug is that red, white, and blue method, which required you heating it, and it was a very kind of labor-intensive process. The newer version has less ingredients, and they call it a cold cook. You don't have to put any heat to it. They use ammonia that has the water removed from it. It's called anhydrous ammonia. They usually get it from places that do industrial farming because it's very often used as a fertilizer. And it has to be kept under a cap or it just starts evaporating. You get smoke. It looks like dry ice. But they take that stuff and they throw in the lithium strips and then they throw in the ephedrine, the same stuff. And it's a very quick process. And just about anybody can make it. You don't have to have any kind of chemistry skills. So the proliferation of meth throughout the United States really kind of hit an epidemic when this kid was at that age where you'd really be getting into drugs. It's backed off quite a bit because of how much more opiates are now available. More people abuse opiates now than ever have before because of fentanyl and the availability on the street of all this stuff. But Back in the 90s and the early 2000s, meth was really taking over the country. And the reason it was because you could take stuff that most people could buy at any hardware store or any grocery store, and it was like alchemy, right? You could take, $75 worth of ingredients and make thousands and thousands of dollars worth of product. And everybody and their brother became a cook. The show Breaking Bad, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's the story is about a high school science teacher that ends up becoming a meth cook after a cancer diagnosis. But that's what meth is. And I had said on a previous show that, when you inject this stuff versus doing any other way, it causes you to release your own brain chemicals, right? Tons of them at once. So you talk about a potential for a drug psychosis, meth is the worst. And when you start releasing every brain chemical you got at once and doing it in an unhealthy way, when you go in and your child is born and they hand you your baby for the first time, that's what your brain does. It releases all of these things and it bonds you to that child, right? That's why, if you think about it, they go to the bathroom on themselves, they scream. If you weren't bonded to that kid, you'd throw it out. It would drive you insane. Nature, God, however you want to look at it, has ensured that we would be bonded to our child. And it does that through oxytocin, through dopamine, through all the stuff you've already got in your brain. So when you take most drugs, you're getting high on your own brain chemicals. Those drugs are like putting a key in an ignition and throwing a switch and turning a lock, right? Or turning on a faucet. It's your own brain chemicals. She definitely had a psychotic break. A lot of people do. McKenna, crack has a similar effect, but for a very short duration. Methamphetamine keeps people awake for days on end. So all of those brain chemicals coming in and then a lack of sleep at the same time is terrifying. And if you stay up for 14 days, bad things are going to happen to your brain. You have to go to sleep. We don't sleep to rest the body. We sleep to rest the brain. Right? For real. We always go, well, you got to get your sleep. It's good for you. Your brain is more active when you are asleep than it is when you are awake. Science just literally figured this out because we always thought your brain shut down the way your body did. We also thought that you only started dreaming when you got to rapid eye movement, the deepest sleep. Science has now proved that is not even close to the case. You can start dreaming the second you close your eyes in certain circumstances. So if you're not doing that, if you're not working through all of the bad things that are happening in your life through dreams, through other things, you can go insane. And this kid had a history of needle use. In fact, when he couldn't get anything but crack in New York City, in one of the interviews, he talked about taking the crack and injecting it. And I won't tell people the method of doing that because I'm not trying to help people do those kind of things. But you can take crack and bring it back to a form that can be injectable. I had two musician friends that were meth cooks, and both eventually did state time. Both served 5 out of 7 years. Had trouble working after. Yeah, depending on how much of it you make, right? You can end up in the federal system, but it is usually a state crime, and there are a ton of people that are locked up for the manufacturing of methamphetamine. You see the show Breaking Bad, and you get this vision of these huge basements with all of these, huge storage tanks full of chemicals. In the real world, they're very, very small little operations. They're usually done in someone's kitchen, someone's garage, and sadly, even in just a 2-liter or 1-liter plastic bottle, they came up with a method called shake and bake, where you could just throw all the ingredients at once, shake it up, keep releasing the gas, and eventually you would have meth in it. Dr. Drew said, if Nick was on meth, he is more likely not to remember the event. I don't know that I believe that. Yeah. I don't know that if I believe that at all. I really don't. I've never, Johnny Scoville just yelled BS from the other room. I love Dr. Drew. I don't know how much meth he's done. You can read a lot of books about this stuff, but I've not run into a lot of people who talk about blacking stuff out or losing periods of time on methamphetamines. Benzodiazepines, all of these things. But you have to realize that they call it tweaking, right? You've heard people say he looked like he was tweaking. They even said when he checked into the hotel, he looked like he was tweaking. Okay, the term tweaking literally means to concentrate on something too much, right? Tweakers take apart television sets because they think they can clean the inside of it. Or they'll sit down and try to take apart a watch or do anything that they can sort of just focus on. If you knew the number of people that mailed me watches because they got tweaked out, took them apart, and couldn't put it back together, right? That was a big part of my business for a while as a watchmaker because they get hyper focused. This is why kids who bounce off the walls and can't pay attention are given amphetamines as, the ADHD medication. Katie, stop messing with the laptop. Johnny Scoville, your cat's probably going to knock your laptop down. This is one of those things that they give to people to focus. Drugs that help you focus more often than not don't cause you to black out. People don't black out on stimulants and cocaine. They block out on things that go the other way. Tara. See, Tara's nailed it. Yeah, Dr. Drew needs to do some methamphetamines. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to bust on the guy. I happen to be a Dr. Drew fan, but if he is doing this on meth, he remembers every scream, every sound. He knows where the blood droplets went. That's been my experience. Now, maybe different for other people, but I've never met anybody that went that way, right? Nobody can clean the house like a meth user. There was a very funny commercial in the 90s, and showed a woman on the floor in her kitchen. And I know people are going to go, this isn't funny. It was funny as hell to me. She was on the floor in the kitchen scrubbing the grout with a toothbrush. And they had a little song, like a jingle in the background that said, I don't eat, I don't sleep, but I got the cleanest house on the street. Crystal meth. He used to slay me every time it came on. I thought that was so funny. But the first time I ever saw it, I was in Texas. I was probably in my early 20s. And I was living with a friend of mine. We'll call him Walter. And somebody came by and knocked on our door. And we opened it. It was Walter's neighbor. And he goes, hey, man, can I clean your kitchen? I swear to God, Walt went, what? And he's like, the last time I was over there, you had dishes, you had everything. He goes, why would you want to clean my kitchen? And he's like, because I already cleaned my house. And Walt was like, sure, come on in and clean it. And we had never done this stuff, never seen the stuff. That was my first introduction to that substance. Yeah, it was a very funny commercial. It really was. But it's sad for those people. What's that? On television. They used to play it on TV. It was an anti-meth spot. And it said, I don't eat, I don't sleep, but I got the cleanest house on the street. Crystal meth. It's a frightening drug. When you're a tweaker, that kind of stuff happens to you, and you'll be like, yeah, come on in and do my dishes. It's totally normal, but you'll remember it. That's right, Terry, you will. And I don't buy that at all. Now, could he be in meth psychosis that will cause this stuff? You betcha, right? People do some really twisted, crazy stuff on meth. And there's a term called pipe drunk, right? So if the people who are familiar with meth will probably be familiar with this term. I've seen guys take a meth pipe and while hitting it, go like this and fall asleep because they've been doing this for so many days in a row that their brain's like, got nothing left, man. There are no chemicals left. You're going to have to rebuild the stores, right? Before I can give you anything else. So they tend to crash out, sleep for a week, 4 days, whatever, and then it goes back up.
They don't drink?
Well, yeah. They don't drink water. The term sucked up gets used a lot. People forget to drink water, and then by the time they're done on a 7-day runner, they literally start looking dehydrated, like out of a dehydrator, not they need water. Yes. Well, one of the problems is fitness, new age methamphetamines is what they're calling it now, and I don't know what's the difference. So meth today is very, very different than it used to be. I know guys that did this stuff for years, and then when it went to the cold cook, they were like, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. Have you ever seen the ads on television that says the faces of meth? And it shows a good-looking guy who's like, he's buffed up, and they just keep showing him his face is getting more sunk in, and then he's got it looks like acne. What he's literally doing, they look in the mirror and see things that other people don't. And they're like, I got to get rid of that. Got to get rid of this. And they scar themselves up. You see it for, also for women. That didn't happen with the old stuff. And bikers will call the old stuff white boy dope, right? Peanut butter dope. It wasn't crystallized. It smelled like cat pee. It was a very different substance than what's on the street today. I was 17 the first time. 830 St. Peter bubblegum for 2 days. And I didn't know why my jaw hurt afterwards. The pink stuff. Yeah, they used to call that rose quartz too, but I know what you're talking about. I chewed the same piece of gum for 3 days straight. If you didn't have that gum in there, you just would have gone like this and started grinding the hell out of your teeth. The gum actually helps. My daughter's mugshot shows that deterioration clearly. Very sad. It's one of the most horrific things in the world, and I appreciate your honesty. Can we get some thoughts and prayers for her and her daughter? I appreciate your honesty. It's a tough thing to talk about. It really is. But the problem becomes that they start picking themselves. They call it pickers. That didn't happen before, in my experience, when they started using lithium to make the dope versus using the older method. Lithium does that. And so when I got out of prison, I think it was the first time I got out of prison, a guy that I was doing time with got out a couple of days before I did, and we had exchanged numbers. And he called me and said, "Hey man, you want to make some money?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "No, all you got to do is lend me some cash. I'm going to make a batch of meth." I didn't want my money to be out of my sight to somebody that I knew from prison, so I went out in the woods with this dude to make it. And I remember him, he had stolen batteries, rechargeable batteries. He was taking the lithium strips out of them. If they hit water, they ignite. So if you sweat on them, they'll just catch fire. It's a really crazy thing. But he had to throw these things into this anhydrous ammonia that he was doing the cooking in, this big pot. And he starts throwing the strips in. And I said to him, "What's the measurement for the lithium?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Well, you're making a batch. So you put in X amount of the ephedrine. How many lithium strips go into that?" He goes, "I don't know, 5 sometimes 6. Everybody that does this does a different recipe. There's no standardized recipe. Some of the stuff, people will sit down and have a good time. Some of it, they will hit that pipe and go to the door and look through the keyhole for the next 8 hours. And oddly enough, they'll then do it again the next day. Because what it does to the brain, like that release of brain chemicals is so intense and feels so good that all of the negative shit that goes on along with it, people seem to just be able to deal with. It's the same as any chef. After and before meth, pictures are totally a scare tactic, especially so rapidly. You know what? I've seen some really ugly ones that happened. The loss of tooth, all that stuff. I've watched people crash out. Here, well, I was going to say here. I'm no longer in the U.S. I watched people in Nevada crash out on that stuff in 6 years. I watched a girl, God bless her soul, who was a Miss Hawaiian Tropic bikini model, had a really good job working in the medical field. I won't say doing exactly what. And went from that to missing half of her teeth, completely purple on both sides of her face from picking. And it was 4 years, 5 years. In fact, I did a 3-year prison sentence. When I went in, no, it was a 4-year prison sentence. When I got out after that 4 years, I couldn't recognize her. She walked up to me in a parking lot to say hello. I said, "Who are you?" No idea who she was. It's, tooth loss happens a lot. Yeah, if you stay up for 7 days and don't think about brushing your teeth, it gets really nasty. There's a lot of other factors in it for sure, Tara, because there are people who do it for 25 years and have great teeth. There are people who do it for 25 years and don't get sucked up. There are definitely factors. Some of it has to do with who's cooking it. What you're getting, what you're buying. The cartels in Mexico got so proficient at making that stuff and smuggling it across the border that small little cooks basically got put out of business because the product has gotten so cheap that it's not even worth trying to compete anymore. Most people just get into the dealing end of it. But it's a terrifying substance is what it is. It's a very terrifying substance. And it can be, like I said, you can take it just about any way. You could smoke it, snort it, shoot it, boof it. It's a lovely concept. But knowing that this kid used needles doesn't necessarily mean he was shooting up at the end of his life. But people that are needle users are needle users. If he shot heroin, I would say that there's at least a decent chance he was shooting this. Although there are a lot of reports that he smoked it, that's not uncommon for people to do both. They'll shoot it to get that. That first rush and that cough. It's a weird phenomenon, but if you do shoot it, it starts to feel like your lungs fill up with sand. The first time it happens, you think you're going to die. It's a terrifying feeling. It does suck all of the good stuff out of your body, Tara. There are people that not only brush their teeth but take calcium supplements. One of the problems is, and again, this is, I think, a new phenomenon. I don't think it happened as much with the red, white, and blue. But you got this, the body needs calcium to process the meth. So you start getting bone loss. You start getting tooth loss. It goes to wherever it can get calcium first. So like I knew guys that were just absolute, guy that worked at our phone room back in the day, that he would come to work on it, completely twacked out, had all of his teeth. And I said to him once, I'm like, how is it that you still have your grill? He goes, oh, I take like 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day. But true story, it's not funny, but it's funny. I brought him into the office because he was on the phone and I'm listening to him. And I said to my brother, he's not making any sense. Like, listen to what he's saying, man. This guy's not making any sense. And my brother goes, he's on drugs. So I brought him into the office. And at the time, everybody there was on drugs, right? So when I got him in the office, I said, listen, man, I'm not judging you. Everybody here's on something. I go, but what's up, dude? Are you using drugs? And he goes, I do a little meth. And I go, well, you're not making a lot of sense on the phone. And he's usually a killer. He usually was really, really good at it. And I said to him, I want you to be honest with me. I've told the story on the air before. I said, I want you to be honest with me. When was the last time you slept? And he said, what's today? And I said, Tuesday. And he went, April? I was like, you need to go home and get some sleep.
Aaron Q showed up.
Yeah.
Needed money.
Yeah, that was an unusual office.
You would remember the name?
Yeah, no, I would have remembered that was his name. That guy kind of stuck out in my mind. He also had somebody show up one day and say, he goes, hey man, is so-and-so here? I said, yeah, he's here. I said, but he's working right now. He goes, I don't give a crap. He owes me money. Tell him if he doesn't get out of here right now, I'm going to kill him. I went, I'll be right back. I'll let him know. You know, he was, and he would have. The dude was he was an aggressive human being, a little frightening. Tara says, I did a little bit of math. Never lost any of my teeth. I used to go to work on all drugs all the time. Did a little bit of math. Yeah, I think, and here's the other thing. If you're a heroin addict, you're probably not going to maintain a job. You know, I mean, if you work as a public speaker, you do something that you only got to work 2.5 hours a day, you're a rock star or something like that, you know, where the money's good. But most guys and gals can't continue to work and keep a job and do heroin because you're either going to nod out at work or you're going to get sick at work. But there are people who go to work because of meth. There are people that work unbelievably long hours. It was an epidemic in places like the oil fields. What's that?
Fiber.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a guy that literally would work for us for, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours at the room and then go work another job. He could work. So glad I never tried nothing like that. I am too, ABAC. Yeah, not everyone can do this kind of stuff and function. There's a lot of truth to that. And you do need sleep. If your brain doesn't have an opportunity to work through things during sleep, you can start hallucinating while your eyes are open. I mean, dream while your eyes are open. You just start to hallucinate. Now, is that a defense? Not if you take the drugs yourself, right? This is something that people need to understand because they go, well, it's not going to be his fault if he was, doing it. No, man, it's not your fault if somebody doses you up and you go and do something. But if you're voluntarily taking drugs, those drugs turn you psychotic and you kill someone. And the other thing that I think needs to be reiterated again and again and again is the legal system doesn't work on why you did something. The legal system works on, did you do something, right? It's nice to know somebody's motive, but you don't need a motive to convict somebody. So there'll be all kinds of speculation about whether or not this caused it or that caused it. But at the end of the day, if he did it, that's the problem. And the not guilty by reason of insanity, I've said this a lot on the show, out of every murder in the United States, they attempt that defense in 1% of all cases, very infrequently. The 1% that attempt it, 75% get convicted anyway. Jeffrey Dahmer, right? But every time somebody brings it up, people immediately go, well, it happened to the guy that shot Ronald Reagan, right? And it did. The McNaughton rule, right, that says if you're not guilty by reason of insanity, it does work. But it usually works when people are literally insane. And that's not, well, I snapped, I was doing a lot of this stuff. It's well, I thought, that was Satan. I didn't think that was my parents. In fact, it looked like a voodoo priestess from Jamaica, and she was coming at me with a knife. Those kind of delusions can keep someone from being found guilty because, honestly, they don't understand the nature of what they did. If you show mens rea, if you show a guilty mind, if you show, that what you did was wrong, and I've said this a bunch, watch the clip of film of him in that convenience store when the cop walks in. If he was a guy that didn't know he did anything wrong, he sure as hell reacted like he did not want to be around a cop. Have you ever watched the Rob Reiner roast? It's very disturbing. It is, but it's way more disturbing for two reasons. Number one, it happened a long time ago, right? The issue. So you ever watch Family Guy? Quagmire was a very funny character 10, 15 years ago. And then the whole Me Too movement thing happened, and we start looking at things a little bit differently, and they don't age quite as well. They told a lot of jokes at the Rob Reiner roast that in hindsight are not very funny. However, if we, and I'm not suggesting you're doing this, Brock, but I've gotten a lot of people in the comments section that have. You two are really starting to get to me. Cats are fighting. He did have friends. Nick did have friends. I've heard a couple of them interviewed. And even from things that he said, when his dad was talking him through that acid trip, he and a friend were doing acid. The friend left. He hung out with his dad. So yeah, he had a friend group. And from all of the friends that they talked to, it's like the roast indicated sexual assault. Yeah, but every roast says something dumb like that. For real. I started going and looking at other ones. And Bruce Willis's roast, anybody that they roast, they start cracking jokes because they want to, the idea is to go blue, to be as offensive as you can. The roast of Pamela Anderson was horrific. What was the name of that comedian? Brett something, the woman, had her own show. She ended up getting hooked on drugs. Her roast was literally 2 hours of them picking on her for pills and things like that. Pamela Anderson basically got molested by, what was that guy's name? Andy Dick. Was stood behind her, squeezing her boobs and acting like an idiot. Those roasts are designed to be as offensive as they possibly can. If you're a woman, they turn you into a whore. If you're a guy, they turn you into a pedophile. What's that? Quagmire. It's just, they're disgusting. And they've always been bad. But now they're horrific. I mean, honestly, I can't watch them.
You want to get a roast? Be a YouTuber.
Right? Yeah, you want to get roasted? You start a YouTube channel. I got to know it says, if you have money, you have friends. There's something to that. But people will take that Rob Reiner roast and go, this is proof he molested his kids. A roast is not proof of anything. It's people making, horrendous jokes. And they're trying to be as over the top and nasty as they can. And they made jokes about Rob Reiner liking kids. They do this literally to everybody. So and you know what? All of Hollywood could be. But even if he did, I don't know that translates to him doing anything to Nick. And I also, here's where I'm telling you, this is what doesn't pass the smell test to me. And I happen to have a mental health professional in the crowd today who can absolutely help me with this. See, this has been misquoted then. This is probably why I couldn't find it trying to find it by Nick, because this has been misquoted on someone's podcast. Thank you. She says, Nick Reiner didn't rob a vet clinic. That was one of Dopey's hosts, the one who died, Chris. Thank you. Do you need a psychologist then to assess? Yeah, absolutely you do. And there will be, that's what this whole trial is going to be. You're going to have psychiatrists on one side, psychiatrists on the other. But when people start suggesting that maybe he was molested by his dad, I have a mental health professional right now in the chat. If somebody says to a mental health professional, I was molested, they call the cops instantly, right? Or they lose their license. He went through so many doctors and so many rehabs. And so you don't send your kid off to talk to a mental health professional, knowing full well they can turn you in. Like all they did was send him to mental health professionals. Hollywood or not, like he's a Hollywood star, but he went to a rehab in Maine. He went to one in New Jersey. He went to one in Texas. And I promise you that if he had said to them, yeah, my dad touched me, they're calling the cops. It isn't even an option. It is absolutely baked into what they do for a living. To me, it doesn't pass the smell test that he would be that comfortable sending his kid off to all these mental health professionals, knowing that could have ended, poorly for him. I have to in Canada. It isn't just you lose your whole degree career. You are charged with not reporting. you know what? I don't know if that's the same thing in the United States, but it may be. I'm not a mental health professional. I suffer from mental illness. I'm on the other side of the. I'm on the other side of that one. But yeah, this is absolutely a part of that industry, and it doesn't pass the smell test to me that Rob Reiner would keep sending his kid off to one rehab after another if he had been molesting him. But if you continue to joke, right, or you continue to, like, you go to roasts or whatever, there's a picture of his of Rob Reiner's dad kissing him where they kissed on the lips. The number of people that have run with this, they did it in public. They did it at an event, which means it was probably a gag, right? It wasn't like they caught them in the act of a kiss. There are diagnostic codes for symptoms that are due to intoxication. Any way you shake it, this is going to be a trial of experts. The prosecution is going to get people that say, this isn't his fault. Guaranteed this isn't his fault. He's mentally ill. He didn't know what he was doing, blah, blah, blah. The defense is going to get experts that go, the hell, he didn't. Now, keep in mind, that's not going to be the trial. The trial is going to be, did he do it? Then there will be a second trial of whether or not he was insane when he did it. But in California, as in most states, you still have to go to trial. There's going to be a trial where they're going to either go in and plead. I mean, they're going to have to plead not guilty. They're not going to plead guilty to this. So Alan Jackson is damn good. But he's going to have to, let's say he's twice as good as every other lawyer. Only 25% of the time does this defense work. So if he's twice as good, that raises us to about a 50-50 chance, right? And I don't know, that what frightens me is the amount of media attention that this is getting and the way the narrative is turning. The night that they found out that the kid did it, it was, this kid's a scumbag. He should spend the rest of his life in prison. Look at him, that sick bastard. Like, for real, that was the content. And now it's all kind of shifting to, well, you really can't blame him, right? You know, he's mentally ill. You think he'll make a deal. He can't make a deal. With all due respect, what deal can you make? So there's only two options for this. One's the death penalty, and one is life in prison without the possibility of parole. When you kill two people, that's a special circumstance. It's a capital offense. They cannot give him anything other than life without the possibility of parole. So what do you plead to? I'll plead guilty if you give me not the death penalty. I mean, the death penalty in California doesn't even mean the death penalty. They haven't killed anybody in decades, right? Right now, the current governor has it on a moratorium where no one's getting killed. They have to consult with the victim's family. The victim's family is also Nick Reiner's family. You follow? So I don't think his brothers and sisters are going to go, yeah, let's give him the needle. And that is really taken into account on this stuff. Yes, Nikki, Diddy did try to get out of jail for Christmas, and the judge said, you're not going anywhere. And I promise you, people, he isn't going to get out on an appeal. There's nothing that's going to get Diddy out of jail except finishing his sentence. I've said that from day one, and I promise you, there are going to be so many videos talking about how he's about to get out because it pays well. The guy ain't getting out. He's not getting out. Life is only 15 years here in the UK. Well, we have a couple of different kinds of life in the United States, and every state has the ability to do it differently. But if you kill two people, that's a special circumstance, right? Two murders at the same time. There's no other option except in California, the two options are life without the possibility of parole. That's different than life because you can get 25 to life. You can get 10 to life. What that means is they could keep you in there for the rest of your life because you're going to have to go for a whole nother sentencing in front of a parole board. Charles Manson, right, kept going in front of a parole board because he didn't really have a life sentence. At first, he was given the death sentence. And when they commuted it, basically he had like a 25 to life. Once that was over, he had to keep going back in front of a parole board again and again and again and again, and they never let him out. Like Menendez, right? The Menendez brothers, absolutely. The Menendez brothers did. The Menendez brothers case got. That's not a deal though, right? So the Menendez brothers went to court and were found guilty. Then they were given an opportunity to get parole. When they went in front of the parole board said not giving it to you. But at least now they have the opportunity to get parole. But there was no deal in that one. They went all the way to the box and lost. Right?
Christian makes a good point there. Because everybody thinks that if you found reason and insanity, you just go to a nut house and then they let you out. It doesn't work that way.
Correct. Yeah, and that is a good point.
She defines it there.
I was incarcerated with a guy, and we were waiting to go to trial, and he kept trying to play the I'm not right in the head card, and he was telling people he was doing it. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to prison. I'm going to go to a mental hospital. Well, they sent him to a mental hospital prior to his court date, so he never went to court. He could go in there for 7 years. The second they go, he's fit to stand trial. Now he's going to go back and have to go to court for the kidnapping he had. It's a dangerous game to play. I think the Menendez brothers should get out, says McKenna. I do too. Mr. Wolf, good to see you. I absolutely believe that they should get out. I think that recent evidence that came to light changes that case. I don't think it's ever right to kill your mother and father, but even some of their relatives want them out because it is looking far more conclusive that the father was molesting the both of them. That just wasn't a story. It's a hard case, though, because, you know, they did some really sketchy stuff right after the death. They went out and bought Rolex watches and Porsches, and one of the brothers had written a paper in college, a play about killing both of your parents for money with shotguns, right? That showed wild premeditation. It's a hard case. It really is. But the father used to manage a band called Menudo, and it was a band that never grew up because all of the people in the band were between the ages of like 13 and 17, and they were a Latin American band, super popular in Latin America. As the kids got older, they just replaced him with another kid that was younger, and the band went on for a long time. And the father allegedly molested one of the kids in the band for a long period of time. And I think that changes a lot. Didn't he molest Corey Feldman too? You talking about?
Listen to Corey, probably did.
Yeah. Johnny Scoville says if you listen to Corey, maybe. Are we talking about the father of the Menendez brothers? Not to the best of my knowledge. I think that Corey Feldman just in a recent interview said that he was molested by Corey Haim. I'm sorry, but Corey Feldman's a jackwagon. I liked his movies, I really did, but the guy's an idiot. And I think that at this point he'll say anything for cash. When a guy spends years going, give me $10 million and I'll make a movie about Hollywood and tell you everybody in Hollywood that's a child molester and blah, blah, blah. And the truth of the matter is the only names he came out with was Dominic Brascia, who was already dead, right? He didn't really out anyone. And by all accounts, he knew that Corey Haim was being molested by that same Dominic and sort of continued to try to facilitate him having to be together with the guy. It's an ugly case. All of it is. Hollywood is ugly in general. It really is an ugly place. And it's certainly not the place of dreams that people from around the world kind of look at it as. It's a seedy, nasty, drug-filled, shitty place to be. The Menendez dad. Yeah, I've never heard anything about the Menendez father having anything to do with Corey Feldman. But I will make you a promise I will chase that down. I like a good Feldman.
Speaking of roast, you ever see Bob Saget's roast? I'm gonna talk about foul.
Oh yeah, you want to see the worst roast you've ever seen in your life? Look up the roast of Bob Saget, right? Because he was on the show. What was the name of that show? Full House. That had the Olsen twins on it. His whole roast is jokes. Everybody made jokes about him molesting the Olsen twins because that's just how those roasts go. They're just disgusting. I love Corey Feldman's music videos. Well, who doesn't? Then there's not much more fun than watching Corey Feldman walk out on stage, step on the microphone stand, and whack himself in the face with the microphone. I may have watched that 400 times.
Or pretend to play guitar.
Or pretend to play the guitar. He's going to fantasy rock camp for the last 30 years of his life. God bless him. You know what I mean? He's for a rock star. He was a good child actor. You know what I mean? It was a lot of fun. Till he got into that Michael Jackson phase and started thinking he was Michael Jackson.
He still does it on every time he moves.
he does that leg thing and the hat thing. He really got into the whole Michael Jackson. God bless him. But he is the gift that keeps on giving when it comes
to yelling at his band. Boy, he is.
All the time. Every show he goes off yelling at his band. Jim and Them. If you guys have never seen a show called Jim and Them, they have a pretty good time at the expense of Corey Feldman, but they're professional about it. They're Corey Feldman fans, in all honesty. May not come across that way, but they are huge Corey Feldman fans. They troll him a little. Come on, don't be mean. No, but what they do, they have a show where they talk about Corey. I wouldn't call it trolling. I really wouldn't. Corey Feldman has done some really foul stuff. Some of the angels that work for Corey
stuff this morning.
He's done some bad stuff to women, and I think that he's got what's coming to him. You know what? I just have to put this up there. I just have to. Can you see that? Ah, there you go. Let's try that again. Is this a wedding ring? I've had this on for a really long time. It is absolutely a wedding ring. It's been on a long time. 5 months, 4 months, something like that. And it is a wedding ring. What is your cat on?
Slippers.
It's those furry feet, man. She slides all over the place. Okay, have a great day. Got to know it. Take care of yourself. All right, people. I will be going live later tonight. I wanted to come on and talk about this. Just to reiterate, Diddy ain't getting out of jail. And man, please, the rags aren't helping. And please, for the love of God, right? Susie Q, is good to see you. For the love of God, as these things are coming out, watch for the patterns, right? Watch for the patterns. It went from the he's to blame to he's not to blame. And now almost every big creator has on a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a criminal profile to tell you whether or not he is sane or not. It's dangerous in my opinion. And it's, I don't know. I mean, you can come on and say it's irresponsible to beat hell. It really is. You know, none of these people sat down with this kid. So they're going back kind of the way that I am, but they're going back to listen to the Dopey podcast and listen to all that. That's a performance to some level, right? It's not the same as sitting down across from someone and spending time trying to diagnose them. These people that are talking don't know what drugs he was on. They don't know what he's prescribed. They don't know how long it's been prescribed. We can theorize, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But to come on and say, I'm a professional, I've worked in the industry for a very long time, this is what I do, and this man is absolutely insane, I think is a problem. Was I ever in a psych ward? I was on suicide watch for over a month, but not because I said I wanted to kill myself. I have been tossed in a couple of padded rooms. I never spent any length of time there. It was usually a punishment. In prison, very often they'll put you in a psych ward for a few days if you piss them off enough, right? Or up to 30 days if you really make them mad. It's a punishment thing. I've never been committed because of mental illness or drug abuse, but I do believe he has. That's probably a fairly safe bet. Jamie Cotton. I'm sorry, the movie Dodgeball. Love it. Mental health professionals are not supposed to diagnose someone they've never examined. They have to say those are for entertainment purposes. You know, Kristen Melinda, I bet they do say that. The thumbnails, I'm not watching a lot of them, to be honest. I don't want to hear somebody tell me whether or not this kid is, and you know, when I say kid, people take unction with that, right? They take umbrage because he's 32 years old. He was the kid of Michelle and Rob Reiner, which is probably why I continue to say it. And I'm older than dirt, so that's probably why too. He's about the age of my son. But this grown man has got an awful lot of issues. I think that's fair to say. But as just a ex-con, right? There seems to be an awful lot that showed he knew what he was doing, right? Allegedly, they haven't found the murder weapon. And if he's hiding the murder weapon, that certainly shows that there is some level of mens rea going on there. Oh, sure, take all the umbrage. Don't leave any for the rest of us. It's kind of what I do. I apologize. It won't happen again. All right, people, I will see you on the next one. Come here, squirrel. Come here. People want to say hi. Yeah, she just won't cooperate. She's a cat. But see, if I ignore her now and act like I don't care, she may walk over here. So that's what cats do. Right? I just don't care. You don't have to go anywhere near me. Get over here, you little snot. I do it. And this is a cat that used to hang out in the basket. Now she's just kind of evil. Now she's just kind of being a rebel. I think it might be the egg. All right, people, I will see you on the next one. I'm Tommy. God bless. Have a great day. See you tonight.